Welcome back to Star Wars Shovelware, my name's Luke, and in today's review we're going to be taking a look at Divination on the Nintendo Switch, an unusual visual novel game set in a bleak dystopian future where man and machine walk and suffer alongside each other, and as a divinator it's your job to give them direction. But do your prophecies predict the future or influence it? Well, hit that like button, subscribe for more Switch reviews and content, and let's find out. So as the introductory warning pertains to, the story in Divination is not a pleasant one, and the game itself is set in a futuristic world in which humankind and robots live alongside each other, with our cybernetic brethren advanced to the point of consciousness. In the game's opening cutscene we find out that Mother, a cybernetic life form which influenced and governed society, committed suicide and publicly stated that life is a mistake, which as you might expect didn't go down too well. 3 years on and society is still in chaos as protests, riots and revolutionary groups are commonplace and suicide rates are on the rise, and the game follows the impact that your role as a fortune teller has on the clients you meet and the prophecies you divine. Now I'm not going to go into any more detail as this one is pretty much all about the story, which is primarily delivered through news reports and dialogue with clients. But what I will say is that the game is very short, the fortunes you predict change how the story plays out, and I enjoyed experimenting to discover the different outcomes. So Divination is primarily a visual novel and it's comprised of 4 short interactions with 4 different clients. Each of these has their own story to tell and a different reason for visiting and seeking answers to the questions, and as a diviner it's your job to listen to what they have to say and then using runes predict the outcome of their inquiry. Now there's really not a huge amount to say about the gameplay as most of your time will be spent reading dialogue and questioning clients to find out more about their current situation, and after doing so they'll then fish out a few runes and hand them to you for the reading. Depending on the number of runes being used, you'll have 2 to 4 slots available on the divination board in which to slot them, and the runes themselves each have an image drawn onto them, and each time you place a new rune into a slot, an image will form in front of the client providing a visual representation of your answer. But here's where the game's minor puzzle solving mechanics come into play. The runes actually interact with one another, and the order in which you insert the runes results in different outcomes. For instance, placing the wall rune before the cloud will result in the wall being destroyed, whilst placing them the other way round will see the wall left standing, and so you have to do a bit of experimenting with different combinations and outcomes. Further to this, your answers for one client can directly impact the outcome of an event further down the line, and the game is all about combining different answers and seeing what the end result is. Now as I said, the game is very short and your first playthrough will likely take around 20 minutes or so, after which you'll then get to explore other combinations as you work towards discovering the game's true ending. While the responses of your clients change a little depending on the answer that you deliver, unfortunately in each playthrough the majority of the dialogue remains the same, and so after your first playthrough, like me, you'll probably just end up skipping through most of it to get straight to the rune readings. It's worth noting that you also have a flowchart at your disposal to keep track of which combinations have already been performed, and you can also use this to quickly skip to different clients and test out new rune layouts. Now in total I think it took me around an hour to work my way through all the different rune combinations and eventually discover the final ending, and while the experience was somewhat short-lived, I enjoyed the game's narrative and thought the rune interactions were an interesting concept. I would however say that the game could have done with a few more branching paths and endings to discover, and I think that due to the small amount of content on offer, a lot of people will still think it's a little bit overpriced, especially considering the Steam version can be picked up for a fraction of the price. Overall though, it's an interesting one while it lasts, and fans of short visual novels will no doubt find it to their liking. So visually I really like the game's art style. It was relatively simple in terms of the detailing in it, but I like the dark gritty aesthetic of it, and it really helps to sell this image of a bleak dystopian future. Audio wise, again the sound effects are kept pretty minimal, but it's the game's music which really gives it a bit of atmosphere. We get an ethno-futuristic soundtrack, a genre which combines elements of electronica with world music, and I really enjoyed the tunes in this one and like the way they suddenly changed depending on the situation. All in all, good stuff with the audio and visuals. So performance wise, it's a visual novel, so you wouldn't expect any performance issues, and indeed there were none. When it comes to issues, I saw people complaining about spelling and grammar mistakes in the Steam version, but I either completely missed them or they've been fixed in the Switch version, as I had no problems at all following the storyline. Aside from this, the only other thing I want to mention is that after putting my Switch into rest mode for a while and then returning to the game, I found that it had frozen and then my Switch had a hard crash and wouldn't turn on without me performing a soft reset. And this may or may not be related to the game, but if anyone's watching and experiences the same thing, drop a comment and I'll get the message passed on to the devs. When all's said and done though, Divination is a short but enjoyable visual novel. It's got some dark themes going on which some may find disturbing, but it's also pretty thought provoking, and when it comes to my own personal rating, I'm going to be giving Divination 3 out of 5 stars. Divination is a short, bittersweet gameplay experience that has no real replayability, but in my opinion, it's well worth at least one playthrough. And so that about does it for this review of Divination on the Nintendo Switch. Be sure to hit that like button if it helped you out, let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments section below, and if you enjoy my content and want to see more, consider subscribing to the channel. For now though, I just want to thank you all once again for watching, and until next time, take care of yourselves and game on.